Okay, so now we're going to come on to working with our what we call our hip complex and our lower back complex. Now, obviously, for a lot of guys, this area can become an issue. So I want to show you ways of working using the foam roller and using the ball that's really going to help you to get better movement function here. A lot of our lower back issues will come because of imbalance within the hip, within the glute structures, and in through the adductor complex as well. So I'm going to help you here by giving you the movements that will allow you to be able to free that up using both the ball and the foam roller. All right, so guys, I'm going to come on to what we call the TFL and the ITB. So the TFL is a big fan of muscle and connective tissue that attaches to the top of our hip, and the ITB, or the iliotibial tract, is a band of connective tissue that comes down our leg and it connects in here. You can see that thick band that attaches into the knee. Now, often when we've got disparity and dysfunction that's happening through this area, it can cause the whole kinetic chain. So it can affect our knee function and the way our knee tracks, and it can also affect obviously the way our hip tracks. Now, all of that has an effect on the lower back. So as I said to you before, although we're going to look at different sections, it's the accumulative effect that this has through the entire system. And by releasing off certain areas at their attachments and connective points, we'll find that we release off further up the chain as well. So I'm going to concentrate on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come on to the TFL and the ITB, and we're going to do this together. Now, what often you'll find is guys will get on the roller and roll up and down, all right? We're not going to do that. I'm actually going to get that ball and I'm going to place it onto the top of the hip, so the thick part of the bone of the hip. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to rest my body on top of that, and I'm just going to move that ball around, in and around that attachment point right at the top, okay? Now, you might start to feel a little bit of pain with this, all right? Because again, a lot of the time, it can feel really, really tight. You might find that it travels and you get a secondary influence that comes down the outside of the leg, and you can actually feel it on the kneecap pulling, okay? So all I'm going to do with this is once I get there, I'm going to actually sit there. I'm just going to let the body weight rest, okay, on top of it. This is often just enough to start that initial release process. And then from here, I'm just going to bend that knee, okay? I'm going to bend that knee, and then I'm going to start to keep the foot on the floor. I'm just going to start to bring my knee, pull my knee in towards my stomach, okay? Pull my knee in. So I'm going to keep my knee off the ground to start with as I bring it through, and then I'm going to rest that knee on the ground, and then I'm going to bring it up, and I'm going to return it right back down to the start position. I'm going to breathe as I go through it, and this really starts to help the whole TFL ITB situation, because obviously in the attachment points here, the origin points. Now what I can do from there as well is I can actually straighten the leg, and I can actually draw a straight leg up as well to actually get some of that release happening through here. Back to the bent position. So as you can see, I'm actually drawing the leg through. I'm doing what it would do as it was traveling through. So it actually gets that stimulation into the neural system, so it can optimize itself in actual proper function in terms of what it's doing. And then we can come down to the opposite end, onto the knee. So I just want to go to where that is. That thick band is there. I'm just going to place that on top. Now again, this can be quite sensitive for a lot of guys. You might feel a little bit of pain with ferrule. All right, but all I'm going to do here is, again, I'm just going to gently, and I mean gently with this, flex and extend the knee. Support myself as best as I can. Drop the hip down, and I can do this in a supported position too. Flex and extending that knee as best as possible. Now you're going to feel a little bit in the kneecap here. Okay, this is why we need to be very, very careful. Just the pressure of the ball pushing against it, but also we should start to feel some release through that area as well, so on those attachment points. Now from here, guys, obviously one of the big things is in and around the glutes at the back. All right, so as I come onto here, I'm just going to start to utilize this ball in that area. And I'm just placing that rim of bone, you know, that we've got from the actual pelvic joints themselves, okay? I'm actually going to come into that area here. And that ridge that runs around the bone into the back, so we come round through here, all through that glute max, into this glute medius mini that come round the side. Now, there's also the piriformis in there, and all of this comes in and obviously attaches round onto the hip. So I'm going to come on top of that ball. Now, for a lot of guys, I'm going to be straight up, this can be painful, all right, as we come into here, because obviously we spend a lot of time on what we call a triple flex position, which is when the hip is flexed, the knees flexed, and the feet are flexed. A lot of the time when we're sat down working or we're driving the car on trips. So a lot of this can be quite sensitive and be quite sore. So the whole time, just be really aware of that. You've got your hands behind your brace to be able to give you that extra little bit of support. And all I'm going to do here is I'm going to take it out from that central ridge. I'm going to bring it down and I'm going to roll it out to the side. And I'm just going to see what is there. Now, guys, with this one, I'm just looking for if there's a pain site, if there's a place where it's particularly sensitive. Now, as I roll around that ridge and come out to the side of the hip here, I can just feel here for me is particularly sensitive. So what I'm going to do is, with the support of my hands, I'm just going to keep myself there and just allow in and on those attachment points right by the ball and socket. I'm just going to allow that to sit. I'm going to breathe deeply. Now with each exhale, hopefully I'm feeling a little bit of release here. And then from there, if possible, I'm actually going to take my foot off and I'm going to start to move my leg through that range of motion. So I've actually got some movement happening here as well. And then I'm going to bring my leg up and I'm going to start to roll that leg from center point out to the side and just see how that feels in the joint. And then I'm going to come back again and I'm going to come into it. Now for me here, now this is going in a little bit deeper, and because of that it's producing a little bit more pain because I'm getting below the surface areas and deeper into the attachment points here as well. So this is really good. Okay, this is helping to release that off. And then again, I'm going to come with a little bit of movement. So sweeping the leg to the side, I'm going to bring it back up, I'm going to extend through the leg, just through the stabilization, and then I'm going to rotate through again, and then come back on, and then sit with it at the same time. Now this might take a few goes, okay? It might take a few goes to actually go through it, just to be able to feel and sense that release. And it's obviously something that builds with consistency over time. So you've got to do these things over time in order to get that cumulative effect as well. But you should start to feel some instant benefit from the first session on, okay? Now from here, I'm gonna roll into the adductor side of things. So this time I am gonna use a roller. And I'm just going to come down on the top of the roller and I'm going to get my knee on top of it so I can really start to get into the attachment points again. So I'm just coming in and around that knee here, just at the top part, just where that fleshy part is that hits just above the kneecap. I'm going to get my body in a nice stable position, and then from here I'm just going to turn my foot up and down, and then I'm going to kick through, okay? I'm going to kick through. And I'm just getting that extension, flexing and extension again, straight into the joint so you can see and feel how that is. And then I'm going to roll the heel up and down. And again, I can feel a little bit of tension here. But all of a sudden, I can feel it start to dissipate now. I'm just going to come tiny further, a little bit up the inside of the thigh. I'm going to do exactly the same thing with this. We're just going to move it in and out. Making sure we're balanced and breathing. Now what that's going to do, again, is it's going to start to free off that entire area. It's really going to help everything that's in it coming in, and it's attaching to the hip and to the knee. And I'm going to show you through a mobilization sequence now that we can add on to it that's really going to help with that overall function. So lastly, with regards to this sort of hip and lower back complex, getting into the front of the hips is really important as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize the ball once again. I'm going to come down. Now I'm going to place that ball just in that point again where the attachments are in and around the bone. And right on the very, very front, I'm just going to allow that just to sit in. And again, I'm just going to allow the pressure there to help to release off in and through the front of that hip. And then from there, I'm just going to move the hip out to one side. I'm going to roll that up. I'm just going to allow myself to feel that in through the front of the hip. Take it across, bring it up and down the joint. And I'm going to be able to flex back and through with the ankle, drawing that in towards the lower back and the glute to allow myself to be able to feel that in through the attachment point and to help to free that up as we go through. And again, I can move my leg out to one side here, just connect with that, gently moving the knee as it's moving along the ground, the knee coming up along the ground, just so I can actually feel it in and around the front of that hip and those attachment points. And again, I'm going to come back to flexing and extending the knee just to help to release off through that area. Okay guys, so we're going to do some stretching and mobility work in and through this hip complex to get it working optimally and tie it together with what we're doing in terms of the release work. So the first one we're going to come into is through the hip. Now it's really important with this one with the hip. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the hip away, okay? Then I'm going to contract that glute and push it forward. Now, why I'm doing this is because as I contract the glute, it actually is a system called reciprocal inhibition. What it does is, as I switch one muscle on, the opposite one switches off. So I can really feel, as I start to push with utilizing the glute at the back, I can feel that it's pushing through the front of the hip. Now, once I've got this happening, what I can do, just to amplify this a little bit more, take the hand above the head, and then keep pushing with the glute. Reach over the top, so the hip itself is actually going out to the side, laterally. And then bring that back in again. Secondary to that, a push with the hip, hand on the outside of the knee, and rotate away. I'm still pushing with the glute. Now once I've done that and I'm starting to feel a little bit of change in the hip, what we can do is we can take the foot a little bit further out, push with the glute, and then lean into it a little bit, okay? Just a little bit, you don't have to lean into it much. Keep the sternum nice and straight, and then go back to those two movements. Still pushing through the glute. And release. Now that should obviously really help with the front of that hip. What I'm going to do is I'll obviously do that with both sides, as with all the movements. I'm just going to move this mat back, and I'm going to come forward now. So to get into that area even more, I'm just going to bring one foot up to the side. Just come here so you can see it better. One foot up to the side, and then from there, I'm going to keep my eyes down to the ground. And I'm going to gently lift up and lift in and look ahead of myself. So I open that hip up that little bit more. can swap that over so I can show you this next part. I'm going to do the same thing again. Drop the hip in. Let it open up. Keep the sternum down. Slowly lift that sternum up. And then when I've been there for a little while, I'm just going to roll that foot out. So the bottom of the foot, actually, if I come over to the side here so you can see it properly. So the foot, I'm going to roll the foot out. And I'm actually going to turn into that just a little bit. Just slightly as I come through, so I can start to feel that opening up just that little bit more. I'm going to bring that foot back down to the ground, and then I'm going to gently bend my elbows down, and I'm just going to drop in. I'm just going to drop in just a little bit, just so I can start to feel this more through the back, through the hamstring sort of area. Really helps to open the hips through. And I'm just going to bring myself in, plonk myself on the ground, and then from here I'm just going to let my hips drop from side to side, just to help to open them out as they go. Now then, what we would do is come back and then just repeat that sequence on the opposite side. So in this case, I repeat that sequence on the right hand side, just to open that hip area through there as well. Now that really starts to offer us a lot of great opening up with regards to our hips, and it allows that function through that lower back to be an awful lot better. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple more things that you can actually add into it as well. So this sort of optimization in terms of with the knee and through what we call through the adductor range, is that I'm going to allow my knees to separate out, okay? Now, I'm going to show you from both angles so you can see it. So from here, I'd allow this to separate out and to open up. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to come down and in, and I'm going to let myself sit back on my hip as much as I possibly can. So if I come to the side to show you this, I'm going to come down, I'm going to let my knees open out. I'm going to sit myself down as best as I can, down onto the forearms. And then this might be particularly sensitive, guys. It is for a lot of guys as it comes up and in through that groin and into the attachment. But I'm going to sit myself down. I'm going to slowly sit through, and then I'm going to allow myself to come up. Slowly sit down. Come back up. Slowly sit myself down again, and extend through there. Now, as this gets better, you might be able to open those knees out further, and then repeat the same process, sitting down, sit myself down, gently allow myself to sit a little bit further in and a little bit further in as we go. Now remember with this area, guys, this is particularly sensitive through this area as well, or it can be for a lot of men. So make sure that you do this gently, make sure that you do this in small increments. Don't just get in there and chip yourself down. Really start to let yourself drop in and with that. Now what that will do, that series of movements through the hip, through the front of the hip, then being able to have the hip extended and being able to sit down through that area and in through the glute, and then offering this together as well. It's really going to help to open up the front of the hip, the back of the hip, everything that's moving through the inside of those adductors as well, which is going to help that hip function. And if you can do that, that's really going to help what is above that, which is that lower back area. So we're looking at that kinetic chain through the ankle, through the knee, through the hip, and into the lower back. All these things connect, and if we can put them together with a lot of these sequences, it will help us to optimize your movement.